The most effective battlefield antiseptic in the history of human warfare costs exactly nothing. It requires no factory, no patent, no prescription, no laboratory. It grows on the bark of trees in 48 states right now, and the industry built to replace it is worth $53 billion a year. Not because it works better. That question, nobody in that industry wants you to ask. The World Health Organization has a name for the 6 bacteria most likely to kill you if you are admitted to a hospital today. They call it escape. This organism was tested directly against all 6. The results are sitting on a server at the United States National Library of Medicine right now. Fully accessible. No paywall. The United States Army already knew about this. They carried it into combat, not the pharmaceutical division, the infantry. And then, in the same decade, the antibiotic industry was born. It disappeared from every military medical manual ever written. There is a reason for that. That reason is worth $53 billion a year. And that story starts right now. Sandra Kowalski is 63 years old. She spent 27 years as a trauma nurse in Billings, Montana. She has seen more antibiotic-resistant infections than she can count. She has watched patients survive surgery, only to die from what grew in the wound afterward. In 2019, it happened to her. A routine procedure, a small infection at the incision site, standard protocol, antibiotics. First round, no response. Second round, escalated. Third round, the infection was winning. Her attending physician used a word she had used herself 1,000 times, standing on the other side of the bed. Resistant. A trauma nurse, 27 years of watching others fight for their lives, sitting alone in a hospital room at 2 in the morning, her own arm wrapped in gauze, watching a red line creep slowly up toward her elbow. That red line has a name. Clinicians call it lymphangitis. It means the infection is moving. It means time is running out. Sandra Kowalski had spent her career telling patients that modern medicine had the answer. She believed it. In 27 years of trauma nursing, nobody had ever mentioned what soldiers carried into battle before any of those answers existed. The world where this organism was truly understood begins somewhere most people will never go. Not a laboratory, not a pharmacy, a trench. Imagine the Western Front, 1917. Mud, wire, wounds that do not close, no penicillin, no sulfonamides, no sterile packaging, nothing synthesized in a laboratory because no laboratory had yet synthesized anything. And yet, military field medics had something that stopped infection on open battlefield wounds, something they pulled from the bark of trees before leaving camp. The Dakota people had a name for it. Chan Wizie, the spirit of the north wind. Before any European set foot on this continent, 3 separate indigenous nations had independently identified what this organism does to bacteria. They did not have electron microscopes. They did not need them. That knowledge survived for thousands of years. Every war, every plague, every century of forgetting. And then, in 1 decade, it vanished from the official record. Not because it stopped working. It did not vanish because it failed. It vanished because something more profitable was invented. But before we get to that, you need to understand what was actually buried. 659 AD, the Tang dynasty's imperial court was compiling the first government-sanctioned pharmacopoeia in human history. 850 medicinal substances, classified, verified, cross-referenced. This organism was in it, listed for wounds, listed for infection, listed for conditions of the chest we now call tuberculosis. Hippocrates, 400 BC, recorded its use for infections. The physician who gave medicine its oath knew this organism by name. Roman military physicians carried it in standard field kits across 3 continents, not as folklore, as protocol. This is not a plant. It is something older. A symbiosis of fungus and algae that has been fighting bacteria since before trees existed. That white thread is 400 million years old. In 2021, researchers whose findings are permanently archived at the United States National Library of Medicine, the same institution that houses every clinical trial your doctor has ever cited, published a comprehensive review of every study ever conducted on this organism's antimicrobial activity. 2 universities, 2 countries. No pharmaceutical funding, no conflict of interest declared. The journal, Journal of Ethnopharmacology, PMID 33276059, permanently archived. Anyone can read it right now. For free. The primary active compound, usnic acid. First isolated, 1844. 180 years ago. Here is what usnic acid does inside a gram-positive bacterial cell. It shuts down RNA synthesis. Simultaneously, it halts DNA replication. 2 mechanisms, simultaneously. The bacterium has no exit. Nobody told your doctor this compound has existed since 1844. A 2025 study confirmed usnic acid's activity against MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, the bacteria that kills over 35,000 Americans every year. The bacteria that a 3rd round of antibiotics could not stop in Sandra Kowalski's arm. A 2023 study tested Usnea species directly against the escape pathogens. The WHO's official list of the 6 drug-resistant bacteria most likely to kill a hospital patient. Usnea showed inhibitory activity across that list. The fastest-growing antibiotic category in the global market right now is RNA synthesis inhibitors. That is the mechanism Big Pharma is currently spending billions to develop and patent. Usnic acid has been inhibiting bacterial RNA synthesis since before penicillin was discovered. Since before Alexander Fleming was born. It grows on the bark of trees in every state in this country. It has no patent. It has no manufacturer. It has no price. It cannot be patented. That ancient organism is already here. The Dakota knew where it grew strongest. Chanweezie, the spirit of the north wind, grows exactly where the wind comes from. They were not being poetic. They were giving you directions. The Cherokee used it on infected wounds. The Ojibwe used it for chest infections that would not respond to anything else. 3 separate indigenous nations, independently across different centuries, on different parts of this continent, arrived at the same organism, for the same purpose. Before any pharmaceutical company filed a single patent. That is not coincidence. That is convergent discovery. When 3 separate civilizations find the same answer without talking to each other. That answer is real. You do not need a laboratory to find this. You do not need a field guide. You need one test. Pull a strand. Look for the white thread. If it stretches, you are holding something that Roman soldiers packed into wounds 2,000 years ago. The traditional application was direct. Clean the wound. Apply the lichen to the surface. That is the protocol that survived 2,000 years of battlefield medicine. Not because it was convenient, because it worked. 2,000 years of documented use applied this organism to the outside of the body. That is not a limitation. That is the protocol. And that is exactly how the peer-reviewed research studies it today. No prescription. No copay. No pharmacy. The north side of the nearest oak tree. That is the address. Now the money. The global antibiotic market in 2024, $53 billion. Not total pharmaceutical revenue. Not all drug categories. Just antibiotics. Just the one category this organism has been competing with for 400 million years. Here is what they are not telling you. The fastest growing segment of that $53 billion market is RNA synthesis inhibitors, drugs that work by shutting down bacterial RNA production. Usnea acid shuts down bacterial RNA production. It has been doing this since 1844. The market is growing fastest in the exact category this organism already owns. The United States government is currently funding research through an agency called BARDA, the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, to develop new RNA synthesis inhibitors in partnership with AstraZeneca and GSK. Your tax dollars. Funding private companies. To synthesize in a laboratory what grows for free on the north side of oak trees in 48 states. 35,000 Americans die every year from antibiotic-resistant infections. Not from lack of research. The research exists. PMID 33276059. PMID 402-43922. PMC 10672636. 3 studies. Permanently archived. Fully accessible. Nobody told your doctor to read them. It cannot be patented. It cannot be monopolized. It cannot be made scarce. They did not bury this organism because it failed. They buried it because it worked for free. They buried it because free does not generate $53 billion in annual recurring revenue. They buried it because your survival is only valuable to them if they can bill you for it. When an organism cannot be patented, it cannot generate a return on research investment. When it cannot generate a return, it does not get studied. When it does not get studied, it does not get prescribed. When it does not get prescribed, 35,000 people a year die from infections that a strand of bark growth might have addressed. The standard American medical school curriculum dedicates over 100 hours to pharmacology. It dedicates 0 hours to organisms that cannot generate a return on research investment. That is not an oversight. That is allocation. You do not need a prescription. You do not need a laboratory. You do not need a medical degree, a field guide, or anyone's permission. You need one test. Pull a strand. If it stretches before it breaks, you are holding the same organism Roman field medics packed into open wounds at the edge of the known world. You are holding what the Dakota called the spirit of the north wind. You are holding what survived every attempt to replace it. The traditional application has not changed in 2,000 years. Clean the wound. Apply the lichen directly to the surface. Cover it. That is the complete protocol used by every culture that documented this organism, from Tang Dynasty physicians to Dakota healers, to the soldiers who carried it in leather field kits before penicillin existed. You are not doing something fringe. You are not doing something dangerous. You are not going outside the system. You are going before the system. To the place the system came from, and then buried when it realized it could not charge you for it. 180 years ago, a chemist isolated usnea acid and documented what it does to bacteria. 80 years later, the antibiotic industry was born. The organism that had been doing the same work for 400 million years disappeared from military medical manuals within 1 decade. They did not finish the job. Your grandparents did not have a $53 billion industry telling them what to put on a wound. They had a forest. They had knowledge passed hand to hand across generations. So old, no one remembers the first hand that passed it. That knowledge did not disappear. It was buried. You are digging it back up. Go outside. Find a tree away from traffic. Find the north-facing branches. Look for pale green filaments, hanging or bushy, rough to the touch. Pull one strand. Look for the white thread. If it is there, you have found something that $53 billion a year is designed to make you forget exists. Photograph it. Drop it in the comments. Every identification is a data point. Every person who finds this is one fewer person who has to take their doctor's word that the forest has nothing to offer. You are not waiting for permission. The next video in this series is about a preparation that 3 U.S. Army field surgeons documented independently during the Civil War. Not a plant, not a lichen, something they found in the ground after a battle, something that closed infected wounds that nothing else could close. The U.S. Army Surgeon General's office published a report on it in 1865. That report was never referenced again in any official military medical document. Not once. In 160 years. The preparation costs nothing. You can make it in your kitchen in 4 minutes. And 2 peer-reviewed studies published after 2015 confirmed what those 3 field surgeons documented on a battlefield in 1863. That story is next. The forest remembers what the pharmacy forgot. Keep going.